What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Derek and Cody, back from the dead, it appears, but we are here back for another one, guys. And I know it's been like crazy with just our schedules with the summer, not a whole lot of content to talk about. But man, we're here. Derek, my friend, it feels like it's been forever since we have talked. Man, how have you been?
Life is, going by pretty quickly. And I mean, obviously it's the same for you right now. And it's been crummy. We're at that part of the off season where there's literally nothing to talk about. We're trying to figure things out, but as it is, I mean, we'll make do with what we got. But yeah, I mean, life's been good, man. I can't complain.
Good, good. Same for me. Life's been good as well, just been extremely busy. So, I mean, the fact that we were able to get this, I mean, we're recording this literally at like almost 10 p.m. Like, that's just kind of how crazy our lives have been as of recent. But hey, we're back with another one. I'm really excited for the topic we're going to talk about today, guys. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about some sleeper players for the Indianapolis Colts. So, if you're like, what is a sleeper player? Basically, what it is it's a player that maybe a lot of people aren't talking about, right? A player that a lot of people are kind of like sleeping on, essentially, right? That maybe people don't think they're going to be a factor, but we think they might actually be a little bit more of a factor than people are maybe necessarily thinking of them as or not talking about them as. So, with that being said, I believe we have 7 players in total we're going to talk about today. We have 3 offense and 4 on the defensive side of things. So, with that being said, let's actually flip flop here, Derek, and let's start with the defensive side of things. Let's start with the secondary. Derek, there's a guy here, second year player now, out of Maryland. The Colts traded up for in the third round, Nick Cross. And he was a guy that was, had high expectations. He was very hyped up. Like, this guy's going to come in right away. He's going to start. He's going to, I remember some people even saying he might even contend for like rookie of the year on the defensive side of things. But he came in, started a couple games, got benched, didn't really see the field for the rest of the season. And he actually opened up a couple weeks ago on how difficult, year one was for him in a lot of ways. And so Nick Cross, he came in with some high expectations. It looked like he was going to have a big role in his defense last year. But then all of a sudden, he finds himself not even really playing snaps on the defensive side of the ball. So now coming into year two, has an opportunity as that number 3 safety. I mean, we know last year, based off of what Gus Bradley did with the safeties, that Nick Cross is probably going to have a pretty decent role. I mean, you look at the safeties the Colts had last year, and really between Julian Blackman, Nick Cross, and then Rodney McLeod last year, all 3 of them really had significant playing time. So I think Nick Cross is going to have probably a little bit of a bigger role than people are maybe giving him credit for. And based off of year one, I mean, nobody's talking about Nick Cross right now. It's really a guy that's going to probably make an impact for this team, but he might make a bigger impact, Derek, than we maybe initially are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where the role goes because you have Julian Blackman and you have Julian Blackman, Rodney Thomas back there, but then when it comes to everything else going on, I mean, there's a couple different guys that you lost in after this last season, and the room just keeps getting thinner, and especially after you lose Daniel Scott as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he approaches this. You and I were talking about again, like how he was saying how it didn't go as planned for him at the beginning of the offseason last year. I mean, things were looking on the up and up, and then obviously when you get into game time, clearly things are different. It's different when you actually are playing the game. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds this year, understanding, what happened last year and trying to make it to where he learns from those past mistakes and is able to just be a better player. And when that time comes, when there might end up being an injury of some kind, then somebody else is going to have to step up and be that player.
Yep, absolutely. And we know, I mean, the traits are there. I mean, he got drafted. He had, in the high 9s in RAS score, as Ballard traditionally does. He's a Ballard guy through and through in terms of what he's able to do athletically. And so, yeah, he did have a humbling year in a lot of ways, right? Because I think he probably even thought he was going to come in and probably start right away, but that wasn't the case for him. So, he has all the athletic traits. He has another year in the system. He learned probably a ton from Rodney McLeod last year. And so now it's his opportunity to go and make an impact. And I think he might have a bigger one than people are thinking. So Nick Cross is our first player on the list of sleepers. Let's stay in the secondary, Derek, for the second one. Let's talk about a guy that we didn't initially maybe think he was going to have a big role, but due to some circumstances, with guys being injured and, also obviously the Isaiah Rodgers situation, Darius Rush could be a guy that from day one, Derek, he could compete for a starting outside corner spot.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting because, now with this supposed investigation going on with Isaiah Rodgers and a pending suspension, which we believe might end up costing him a whole season at least, there is a lot of positions open now for this because obviously you lost Stephon Gilmore, you lost Brandon Faison in the free agency period this last year. And of course, now you lose another cornerback. So, the majority of this secondary, you're running out there with the young guys. And, everyone's talking about Julius Brents due to the fact that, Julius Brents was the high second round guy. Everyone wants to talk about the Indy hometown product, but we're not talking a lot about Darius Rush and, what he needs to be, right? And that's the sleeper aspect of this because how does Darius Rush fit into this and how does that end up working, for them moving forward? Does he do better than Brents? Does he do a lot worse than Brents? Does he end up getting replaced by Dallas Flowers or does he end up, being maybe the number one corner on this whole team going forward? Who knows at this point, but that's going to be the interesting aspect of this. And it's for the entire secondary is, who's going to be the guy that steps up in this? Because unfortunately, we had a player get himself into trouble and other guys are leaving the team. So now the young guns have to step up and do something.
I tell you, man, it is such a young secondary, which is why it's so fascinating. Is like there's all these guys that are like they have so many traits, but like there's so much unprovenness, which is it's scary, but it's great for a guy like Darius Rush, who has a great opportunity here. We thought, and a lot of people thought he was maybe one of the steals of the draft. And so the fact that he now has a chance here to start from day one, let's say, don't be surprised if you look at this Colts secondary and outside of Kenny Moore, it's all rookies. Like, don't be surprised at all because I think that's a really likely scenario with him and Juju Brent. So Darius Rush makes the list as well. I mean, also just because, like you talked about, everybody's talking about Juju Brents. Nobody's really talking about Darius Rush. And I think he has a great chance here with how inexperienced the secondary is. I mean, the guys he's going to be facing, talked about it, Tony Brown, Dallas Flowers, those type of guys. Almost threw Dallas Flowers on here as well, but I think Darius Rush just makes it because of a little bit more of a pedigree, if you will, than Dallas Flowers. So Darius Rush makes the list here. Let's move into the linebacker room. Let's talk about another guy, EJ Speed, who the Colts brought back. They re-signed the guy that's really been in a reserve role, Derek, ever since he was drafted in 2019 in the 5th round. He's kind of been a reserve special teams guy. But EJ Speed, I think, showed you a little bit last year with Shaquille Leonard going down, had some injuries. And obviously you still had Bobby Okereke. So his role was kind of what it's going to be this year, more of that third linebacker in this scheme. But Derek, I mean, now with Bobby leaving in free agency, I mean, the opportunity is there. If Shaquille is still not fully there, now we all expect him to be, but if he still has issues, it could be a real quick scenario here, Derek, where EJ Speed has a big time role in this linebacker room. Talk to me about him and kind of potentially his impact on this defense.
Also, by the way, if anyone hears the scratching / whining coming from my door right over here, my dog is trying to get in here and he's upset that I'm in here and not outside playing with him right now. So that's why if you hear it, then I apologize on my end.
Good old Colt.
But anyway, EJ Speed, again, I've been talking about EJ Speed. EJ Speed is a guy that, like, I mean, ever since that Cardinals game, from 2021 when he led the team in tackles that game and had to fill in for Shaq Leonard, who had COVID at that time. And I don't know who else was out, but
Like everybody.
um, I, yeah, but then, everybody else was dealing with it. I just was seeing it and I was like, dude, we got a sleeper linebacker here on our hands because this guy has all the intangibles to be an amazing linebacker in this league. I mean, he is athletically gifted, body frame unlike most linebackers in the league. I mean, he's got the athleticism of a Fred Warner. There's not a lot of guys that are 6'5", 240 pounds that can move the way that he does. So, I mean, it's phenomenal what he is. And I've seen it time and time again that in times when he needs to step up and he needs to play, he makes plays. And not only does it on the defensive side, but he does it on special teams too. I mean, hell, he even had 2 touchdowns last year in special teams. So, I mean, this is a guy that can score in so many different ways. And he contributes to this team in a multitude of different areas on the football field. So, and on top of it, you got him for $4 million a year. So, I mean, this was a phenomenal deal that the Colts got in EJ Speed. And like you said, with Shaq Leonard potentially coming back and Zaire Franklin being there, and you lost Bobby Okereke in free agency, I mean, you need to have that third linebacker secured. And EJ Speed's going to get a lot more time on the defensive side of the ball this year, especially if Shaq Leonard has further complications with his legs. We don't know how he's going to do with his back. We don't know how that ankle's going to do. We aren't 100% sure of it. We're expecting Shaq Leonard to be back and ready to go by the season start. But at the end of the day, you don't know how he's going to respond. Zaire Franklin, I'm not worried about. Zaire Franklin had a phenomenal year last year. Zaire Franklin's going to be the centerpiece going forward. But right now, I mean, you still need that third linebacker. Even if that's not the scheme that the Colts run very often, you still need to have that guy in there. And having a guy like EJ Speed is really going to be one of the most underappreciated aspects of this defense.
Right. You never know. You're just an injury away from that guy being extremely important. So definitely going to be a critical role there for EJ Speed. So he's a guy that definitely deserves to be talked about. I think he should be probably on the list the last couple of years. If he wasn't last year, I don't know why we didn't put him on the list. We probably did. But he's a guy that definitely deserves it for all those reasons you mentioned. Now, here's another guy, Derek, that's very interesting. I think he's on the brink of a breakout year. From what we saw last year, Dayo Dangbo, I truly believe, Derek, he has a great chance here this year to really prove himself in this defensive line room. I mean, the dude really had, a redshirt year in terms of that injury, and really was never fully himself, had the offseason last year. And really, like, this is his, I guess, second full offseason. So essentially his second year in the league fully healthy. And we saw those glimpses last year. I really feel like last year you could kind of chalk it up to almost being like a pseudo rookie year for him, just because, he finally had the full offseason and stuff like that. And he really started to show something down the stretch. I mean, he was really a force to be reckoned with. And, he's just like, some of these other guys on the list. He's got all the traits. He's so long. He's so big. He's so athletic. And I think he has a chance here to really, in this Gus Bradley system that really helps defensive linemen out, he has a great opportunity here to really cement himself as, a key part of this defense. And so, obviously there's pressure on a guy like Kwity Paye as well to deliver, but Dayo has a great chance here. And I think a guy that maybe we don't think about when you think about the defensive room, because you already got a couple other guys. You brought Sansa Mabukum over in free agency. You still have Kwity Paye. But Dayo Dangbo is a guy that's kind of a wild card, and I think has a great chance here if he can build off of the strong couple games that he had last year. I think he has a chance here to be a really big force in this defensive line room.
Yeah, I mean, this is there needs to be a turning point for, Dio, right? I mean, you and I had the reactions. We did our reactions in 2021 when the Colts got both Dayo Dangbo and Kwity Paye, right? First guys and second guys, and talking about which of these guys is going to make a bigger impact down the road. Well, so far, Quiddy has just been unable to do much from an impact role simply because he's just been off the field for too much of it. I mean, Dio technically is really only, about to be into, what is it now? Gonna only be his third or second real season going into it now. So it's there's not been a lot of time for Dio to get acquainted with everything more than Quiddy Pay has. It's because of the injury he came into the NFL with. And, Dio has that ability now, but we just need to actually see him put it together because, he shows flashes, but there's times when, the stats that he has just doesn't really back up, the potential hype of this kid. So hopefully there's more to it because again, he like what I was talking about with EJ Speed. I mean, there is no defensive end, maybe outside of Miles Garrett, that has a body frame like Dio Ademo. Like, I mean, it's just not human, just the way that he looks on the outside edge. And you would think that if he gained a little bit more skill and knowledge of how to beat some of these guys, that he would be able to be a lot better than what he is. So hopefully, we get to learn more about him this year. There's a potential for an open spot here on the edge, but the Colts keep bringing in these edge guys, and I know they like to bring in competition for that specific spot, but Dio is a guy that needs to be, someone that steps up because, Ibukum's coming in, Quiddy Pay's still there. Your guys on the inside with DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, they're not going anywhere. So, Dio is going to have to be a sleeper and fulfill that role a little better, or else, his time in Indy could be coming up shortly.
He has a great chance here to really make a name for himself. I'm really excited about him. Yeah, and if Quiddy can't stay healthy, then that spot could easily become available pretty soon. So yeah, Dio in his second full season, really excited to see what he can do in technically year number 3 for him, but we really think it's year number 2 for him. So he's going to do hopefully great things and is going to just continue to build, after that really like great end to the season for him. And speaking of great ends to the season, I really felt like Zach Moss had a really underrated, couple games there at the end of the year. I know they weren't facing the greatest run defenses ever, but with how in shambles this Colts offense was last year, Derek, I mean, my goodness. Zach Moss really, I think, flew under the radar with what he was able to do. He had a couple 100-yard games, a couple games where he was near 100 yards, and he was really the only semblance of offense that the Colts had at the end of the year. So I felt like personally, he proved to me that he could be the RB2 moving forward. And, I think we both agree, and I think a lot of people agree, that it would be probably wise for the Colts to, based off of JT and kind of the injury he had last year, and for the longevity of him, it would be good to get more snaps off of his plate, right? And to give a guy like Zach Moss more of it. So, like, he may not be a guy that's going to get a ton of run, but he might be a guy that could play a pretty decent role in this offense, and maybe a guy we're not talking about, and we just kind of forget and we kind of lump in with how bad the team was last year on offense. We kind of forget about him. But I think Zach Moss is a great opportunity. He proved, in the time he had, that he could be a guy that can, play some decent games for you. I think he has a chance here, Derek, to have a pretty decent impact as RB2.
Yeah, I mean that's what we were trying to get at, right? We want to find the guys that are gonna fulfill the spot right behind Jonathan Taylor. And we've been looking for that guy. Who can be the guy that can consistently take, a few reps away from Jonathan Taylor every game to try to conserve Jonathan Taylor for the down the road in the season, when the games actually matter. And it's very important because, we see what is happening with Derrick Henry and some of these other guys. I mean, it needs to happen. And especially what we just saw with Jonathan Taylor having that surgery, how does a guy like, Jonathan Taylor respond to that? So, and Zach Moss, like you said, I mean, at the end of the year when the team was just doing nothing really, I mean, he was still running for over 100 yards per game in the last 3 games. So, I mean, regardless of whether or not you think that the Colts were trying or not, I mean, Zach Moss was if the team certainly wasn't trying, then that makes it even more amazing that Zach Moss was able to still run for 100 plus yards in every game if the team was not trying. So, I mean, it's good that you have a guy like Zach Moss who, you know, never really found his place in Buffalo because the way that they ran their offense was never designed to be around running the football. But now Zach Moss, who plays the game a lot like a Jonathan Taylor, who's that a guy that doesn't have the top end speed, but is a guy that, you know, can be the bully to run over some people and wear a defense down. That's the kind of guy that you get in a Zach Moss. And that's great for specific teams. You know, if you're trying to get somebody that can take some reps once you're getting closer to the end zone. You know, that would be great for Indy going forward. And we know Shane Steichen loves to use multiple running backs in a multitude of different ways and schemes. So I don't think there's any chance that that we don't see more of Zach Moss this year under Shane Steichen.
Yeah, and we already know, like, like we saw what the Eagles were able to do. Like, they like to use their running backs in different ways. Like Shane Steichen like to use, all the different guys. And so Zach Moss is definitely going to have a role in this team. It'll be interesting to see how Steichen kind of uses that. Because you're right, he's a little bit of a bigger back. I would argue I'd push back on the Jonathan Taylor not having top speed. I think he clearly does. He can do anything. But Zach Moss, I think you're right. Like, he doesn't have that top speed, but he's a little bit of a bigger back, more that power guy. I think maybe that's kind of what you need a little bit. And you got already obviously got Evan Hall, who you drafted, who's more of that, receiving back. So it'll be interesting to see where Zach Moss's role is in this offense. He's more of a goal line back. Like, what does that look like? So he's definitely a guy, though, don't sleep on. I think he has a great opportunity to do some things in this offense with Shane Steichen. All right, let's move on now to another guy who I felt like last year, Derek, when he was targeted, he made the most of his opportunities, but that was the issue. He, along with a lot of players that we could talk about, weren't targeted enough, and that's Kylen Granson. He's more of that guy that's going to be that receiving threat, right? We talk all the time about Jelani Woods, how we think he's going to have a breakout year number 2, but Kylen Granson, I think sneakily, and I say that because, like, just kind of like with Zach Moss, like, because of how in shambles the Colts offense was and how it was really just in disarray altogether. Kylen Granson doesn't really get talked about, but I thought he had a solid season. Nothing spectacular. The stats won't blow you away, but I think he's a guy that, if given the right opportunity and the right targets, could be a solid, kind of complement to Jelani Woods. And so I think I think he can have a really good role in this offense with Anthony Richardson or whoever the quarterback is, and just the ways that, similar to how Shane Steichen did that with running backs, we see what he did with the tight ends in Philadelphia. And so I think definitely Kylen Granson has an opportunity here, and I'll be intrigued to see how they use him, because we already know how good he is and the yak and all that stuff, more that vertical threat tight end. So intrigued with him, and nobody talks about him, but I think he has a great chance here. What are your thoughts?
I mean, you may not. I mean, some people don't like Kylen Granson. Some people have even said that they don't think Kylen Granson even makes it through the roster, which is crazy to me, to think that somebody would think that Kylen Granson doesn't make it through this. I'd find it hard to believe, a guy like Kylen Granson, who has the ability to make all these catches, is going to fall to the 4th or 5th tight end on this roster. I know that we have a lot of great tight ends, specifically young ones, but Kylen Granson is still one of those guys that, in a Shane Steichen offense, is a very unique piece when it comes to that. I mean, some people don't want to admit it, but last year, I mean, there were times when Kylen Granson, for what it was worth, was the best receiver on the entire football field for the Indianapolis Colts multiple weeks. I mean, there were multiple weeks where, he had, those 4 catches for 50, 60 yards, and we're making those catches down the field, and moving the chains, like that sort of thing. And the game last year, even though the Colts offense was terrible, I mean, it felt more comfortable for Kylan Granson last year, who felt like in his second year he was getting his wind a little more, and was getting it down a little bit easier. Hopefully, that is a good sign going forward that he's becoming more comfortable with the game of football and in the NFL. And then it would be awesome if Shane Steichen, who knows how to get guys open. I mean, Granson shows you, man, he knows how to get open. He knows how to run good routes. He's great at route running. He improved his catching ability. His drop percentage dropped literally by like 3% from his rookie year to his second year. So I mean, it was amazing by how much he actually went from dropping so much in his rookie year to second year. He had twice the amount of catches, and he dropped the ball only half as much. So it's great that Granson improved in a lot of different ways and was making a lot of great plays. It's Steichen knows how to use tight ends in his system and knows how to get guys open. And I know that nobody else is talking about him, but Kylan Granson 100% is a sleeper going into this season with Shane Steichen as the offensive guy.
Yep. Absolutely. One last guy we want to talk about here, who I really think is a sleeper as well, and a guy that I was excited the Colts got. I wasn't overwhelmingly like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be like incredible, but I thought it was a solid addition, especially with the loss of Paris Campbell, and that is Isaiah McKenzie. And now, obviously, with the Josh Downs draft, him being drafted, who knows what McKenzie's role is going to be exactly? He could be the number 3 to start, or he could be the number 4. But I think, Derek, he offers you a unique skill set that maybe you didn't really have last year in a lot of ways. And that's, the separation. The Colts really struggled last year in a lot of ways in the receivers with Pittman and Pierce to get that separation. Like they were one of the lowest duos in the NFL last year in doing that. And so I think that getting a guy like McKenzie, who is very shifty, is a little bit smaller than a guy like Paris Campbell was last year, but he's very shifty. You get the ball in his hands. He can do some things. He's coming off of a career year in Buffalo when he got more of an extended role. And I think he has a chance here, Derek, to be kind of that solid 3, solid 4 wide receiver. And also I think he's going to contribute a lot on special teams, especially now, obviously, with the Isaiah Rodgers situation. I think he has a good opportunity to do that as well. So I think Isaiah McKenzie is going to have an impact on this team. Now, what is that going to be exactly? I'm not entirely sure, but I'm excited to kind of see what kind of role Shane Steichen has for him, because I think he could definitely do a lot of cool things for the Colts in just the ways that he's going to be utilized in this offense. So what do you think about Isaiah McKenzie here?
Well, like you said, with McKenzie's role, it's going to be really different this year. And obviously now with Isaiah Rodgers now potentially being out of the picture, that now leaves special teams open for some possibilities for Isaiah McKenzie. We know he's no stranger to that. So that kind of thing might open up now more for the Indianapolis Colts for him. And who knows how much his offensive role is going to be. You have guys like Pittman and Pierce and Downs. It will be very interesting to see how his offensive role is. But I do think that there are some people who think that he won't touch the ball at all, which I think is strange because I think he provides you with a much better skill set than Ashton Doolin. I know that McKenzie and Doolin are almost practically the same kind of guy, but McKenzie is definitely a better route runner,
And smaller
def-
too.
and definitely smaller. So, and he provides a different aspect to the offensive game. But they're both gadget players, so you kind of fill that role of what Paris Campbell was last year. Again, it's all just going to come down to how does Shane Steichen want to use him. And I mean, it could be a great disguise as well for plays like that, because now if you have Isaiah McKenzie motioning into the backfield and motioning out of the backfield, and then having Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson as well. If you see some kind of like triple RPO option type stuff going on with this team, I mean, that could be a skill set that Isaiah McKenzie could drastically be used for, because then you just imagine the speed of all of that. I mean, that's very difficult for I mean, you can game plan for that all you want, but at the end of the day, if you're not quick if you stop for a second to think what you're going to do, then something's going to happen before you know it. I mean, it almost makes me think that they should just be running some like how Georgia Tech runs that triple option stuff in college still, and how nobody can realistically stop it because just nobody else runs it. Like nobody knows how to actually stop it. Well, I mean, that could somewhat be a model for this Indianapolis Colts team going forward, because you literally have all these different guys with all this speed and power, and an offensive line that has been known in the past to, maul people. I mean, that's where they're best at, is, pushing people up front through the rush attack. So, I mean, that could be very interesting to see what if McKenzie is in that kind of role on the offense too.
Yeah. Absolutely. It will definitely be interesting. But guys, that is kind of our thoughts on some sleeper players for the Indianapolis Colts. Let us know your thoughts overall regarding these sleeper players. Are there any other players maybe that you would have put on this list, or not had on this list that maybe we did or we didn't? Just let us know all those things. But that will do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and all your support. We have more content coming very soon. We're really excited about, and training camp is almost here. We're getting there with every passing day. So we're excited about that. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to go back down to training camp again. It was a great chance last year. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Appreciate it. And as always, go Colts.